enter an age where sophistication and imperial grandeur concealed a pervasive atmosphere of dread, an epoch when the rhythmic clop of horse hooves reverberated along lamp-lit thoroughfares. Yet lurking just below that refined exterior, illness waited at every turn. Welcome to the Victorian period, an era of remarkable advancement shrouded in the darkness of deadly afflictions. Within the silk-draped chambers of wealthy estates and throughout the coal-dusted lanes of factory towns, invisible predators flourished. Medical science remained rudimentary, and proper hygiene was scarcely comprehended. Even the smallest ailment could cascade into a fatal outcome. Throughout this age of stunning advancement, paired with savage disparity, humanity faced relentless biological assault. Epidemics weren't merely historical footnotes. They were daily threats, stealing lives with merciless precision. From London's overcrowded tenements to the parlours of high society, safety was an illusion for everyone. We're about to reveal the 10 most terrifying illnesses that plagued Victorian society, organized from frightening to absolutely catastrophic. Some names may ring familiar, but their true impact on 19th century existence remains shocking. Starting at number 10 is a surprisingly dangerous disease, measles. Its modern image doesn't capture its Victorian reality. Back then, measles transcended being a simple childhood nuisance. It was an explosive threat that ripped through residences, educational institutions, and charitable homes like wildfire. Beginning with seemingly mild symptoms, elevated temperature, nasal discharge, and teary eyes, it rapidly progressed into a total body eruption that painted skin an alarming crimson. The genuine danger, however, resided in what followed: lung infections, cerebral swelling, hearing loss, and mortality plagued those already weakened by poverty or frailty. Within congested Victorian urban centres, where entire families squeezed into moist, airless quarters, measles discovered ideal conditions for transmission. Children bore the heaviest burden, particularly those already suffering from inadequate nutrition. While modern vaccination provides protection, Victorian-era measles was a silent assassin concealed behind feverish innocence. Coming in at 9 is an especially horrifying scourge: scarlet fever. Recognizable by its characteristic rough, textured rash that blazed bright red, scarlet fever was both ferocious and frightening. Its targets, predominantly youngsters, suffered intense throat inflammation, scorching temperatures, and a tongue that became vivid red, earning it the moniker "strawberry tongue." Victims endured skin that shed in large, disturbing flakes, causing profound distress and misery. The genuine terror emerged when treatment was unavailable. Scarlet fever could transform into rheumatic fever, permanently damaging cardiac tissue, or trigger renal inflammation with lifelong consequences. Without antibiotics, living through it depended largely on fortune and physical resilience. Communities lived in constant anxiety, sharing hushed stories about the newest young victim in their area. Despite its almost romantic name, scarlet fever planted seeds of pure dread in Victorian households. Position 8 belongs to the phantom destroyer called tuberculosis, or consumption. Perhaps no other illness captured the Victorian age quite like this one. Those afflicted deteriorated gradually: hollowed cheeks, vacant stares, deathly pale complexion. The name, consumption, fit perfectly because sufferers seemed to be eaten alive from within. The manifestations were disturbing: an unrelenting cough that shook the respiratory system, expectorating blood, drenching night perspiration, and such extreme wasting that patients resembled the walking dead. Transmission occurred easily through respiratory droplets, and the cramped, contaminated metropolitan areas of the time made containment virtually impossible. Creative minds and literary figures frequently idealized the condition, viewing the delicate appearance it produced as possessing strange beauty. The truth, however, was anything but romantic. It meant a prolonged, agonizing decline toward death without treatment, without optimism, and for most, without salvation. It claimed victims regardless of wealth, though impoverished areas suffered most severely. Tuberculosis cast its shadow over Victorian civilization, creativity, and community life, leaving traces that persist even now. At 7 sits an unexpected entry: whooping cough, medically termed pertussis. Though it may seem trivial, This bacterial ailment was absolutely horrifying during the 1800s. Initially, whooping cough appeared harmless nasal congestion, slight temperature elevation, perhaps throat discomfort. Then arrived the signature whoop, a terrible gasping noise tearing through the torso. With each coughing episode, young children faced the greatest danger, frequently coughing with such violence that they became cyanotic, regurgitated meals, or lost consciousness. Some sustained neurological injuries from oxygen deprivation. For newborns and very young infants, survival was unlikely. Parents remained awake through dark hours, listening to their offspring fight for each breath, aware that medical intervention offered little help. Without effective remedies, it raced through learning institutions and homes uncontrollably. The distinctive, whooping sound served as a chilling warning that another Victorian youngster might not survive until morning. Number 6 introduces a sinister element, syphilis, the concealed nightmare. Unlike diseases that announce themselves loudly through visible symptoms, syphilis excelled at deception. This sexually contracted infection remained wrapped in scandal and silence, typically overlooked until intervention became futile. Its progression unfolded in gradual, terrifying phases initially. Painless lesions appeared, followed by skin eruptions, follicular loss, and a bewildering array of manifestations that resembled numerous other conditions. The terminal phase held the authentic terror. Syphilis invaded brain tissue, triggering delusions, insanity, and ultimately mortality. Social taboos meant many refused medical consultation or even acknowledgement of infection. Available remedies were primitive and hazardous, frequently requiring mercury compounds. This disease infiltrated every social stratum, striking creative artists, authors, government officials, and laborers equally. Beneath countless tragic Victorian narratives lurked this unspoken, festering antagonist whose name remained practically forbidden. 5th place reveals a merciless, rapidly advancing executioner, typhoid fever. For Victorian city dwellers, typhoid threatened from every plate and pitcher, transmitted through salmonella contamination in consumables and drinking supplies. Its attack came swiftly. Sufferers developed extreme fevers, excruciating intestinal distress, skin eruptions, and debilitating exhaustion that confined them to bed. Critical cases resulted in internal hemorrhaging, mental confusion, or unconsciousness. Complete households could perish within mere days. Nobility enjoyed no immunity. Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's cherished spouse, likely succumbed to this very illness. The disease exposed the deplorable circumstances of Victorian existence, where uncovered sewers flowed beside roadways and potable water frequently came from rivers where refuse was deposited. Typhoid fever exceeded being merely an illness. It represented death delivered via utensil or vessel. 4th position features the throat demon, diphtheria. Picture something dense, grayish, and asphyxiating developing within your windpipe until respiration becomes nearly impossible. That described diphtheria, particularly lethal for youth. This bacterial invasion created a poisonous membrane across tonsil and throat tissue, strangling victims with slow, pitiless efficiency. Caregivers could only observe helplessly while their child struggled for oxygen, incapable of swallowing or vocalizing distress. Yet surviving the throat obstruction didn't guarantee recovery. Diphtheria frequently proceeded to assault cardiac tissue, neural pathways, and renal organs, inflicting permanent impairment. Victorian physicians, lacking contemporary equipment or medications, attempted frantic and frequently excruciating interventions. This ranked among the most dreaded pediatric diseases, with families living in terror of its abrupt appearance. Only the arrival began diminishing this particular nightmare. Position 3 brings truly horrific suffering with smallpox. Throughout recorded history, few diseases have generated comparable disfigurement, torment, and mortality. During the Victorian period, it devastated urban populations with frightening velocity, leaving behind both scarred survivors and innumerable burial sites. The manifestations were savage soaring temperatures, retching, and cutaneous eruptions transforming into excruciating pus-laden lesions blanketing the entire body. Those who survived typically carried permanent marks, profound pitted scars serving as perpetual reminders of their near-death experience. Complete communities became immobilized by panic during epidemics. Yet smallpox also sparked one of medicine's most remarkable triumphs. Edward Jenner's vaccination, developed from cowpox, which gradually began altering human destiny. Nevertheless, for many decades, it remained among the most feared afflictions any Victorian might encounter. Second place belongs to the instantaneous annihilator, cholera. If any disease could transform existence into horror within mere hours, cholera accomplished exactly that. This water-transmitted infection proliferated explosively through tainted water and provisions, especially within the most destitute Victorian neighborhoods. Once it arrived abruptly debilitating abdominal cramping, forceful diarrhea, emesis, and fluid loss so extreme that victims' skin adopted a bluish coloration while eyes receded into their sockets. Some expired within hours following initial symptoms. Mass hysteria was justified. Entire districts could be decimated within 24 hours. Paradoxically, cholera ultimately compelled reform. These horrifying epidemics prompted the development of contemporary sewerage infrastructure and potable water programs. Cholera delivered catastrophe but simultaneously catalyzed progress, claiming the #1 position as the absolute worst influenza, indeed, the common flu. But understand clearly, this bore no resemblance to the mild seasonal annoyance familiar today. During the Victorian age, influenza arrived like a spectral harvester, invisible and terrifying. Without vaccinations, antiviral medications, or viral comprehension, populations stood completely defenseless. The affliction advanced rapidly, incapacitating entire families with extreme fevers, widespread body pain, inflamed throats, and intense chills. Its deadliness stemmed primarily from subsequent complications like pneumonia, which claimed thousands upon thousands. During severe flu outbreaks, commercial establishments closed, educational facilities suspended operations, and thoroughfares emptied as terror permeated communities. It struck children, the elderly, the wealthy, and the impoverished indiscriminately. When epidemic waves arrived, they brought civilization to its knees. Influenza was the unseen executioner from which escape proved impossible, the ultimate terror of the Victorian world.